A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
Welcome inside One Giant Step, a German edition, a Schnitzel edition, as the Giants head to Germany here to take on the Carolina Panthers, both teams at 2-7, a game that we may look back on in April as very, very important. Bryce Young versus Daniel Jones, Brian Burns versus his former team, and two teams sitting right there in that whole muddled pile for top draft picks will take place in the games in the NFL's International Series. So Giants' first trip to Germany, they are unbeaten internationally, which is kind of crazy. I am Shaun Morash, though, and he is Bryce Gelman, who joins us every single week here on One Giant Step. Brycey, Wiener Schnitzel, how are you?
I'm doing extremely well. Very excited for the one game I've been looking forward to all season between the
You ever
Giants
been to Germany?
I have not. But the funny thing is,
neither.
Shaun, and I say this, I'm kidding around, obviously, tongue in cheek, but this is the most important game the Giants play all season. It will.
Well,
it's the most important game they will play all season. At this point, I'm excited. I want to let's get right into it. Let's discuss. Right. Let's get into this game.
Well, I don't want to start with this game, though. I want to start with the week that was in the NFL. Now you're misdirecting.
We'll get to it later.
Now you're misdirecting.
Get the boss.
Can I just make it? I don't even care if you don't respond. I just want to overall cover the trade deadline, and then we'll get to it.
Let's do it. No,
Bryce, he got ants in his pants here.
I want to talk deadline.
All right. Here's the deal. Giants didn't trade anybody at the trade deadline. They held on to Azeez Ojulari. They didn't really shop Darius Slayton, though they held on to him. In the end, they do cut Nick McLeod, which was interesting. Here's the reason I want to talk trade deadline without them talking about it. The Giants did not trade Xavier McKinney, nor did they trade Saquon Barkley in the offseason. Now, they are going to end up with a fourth-round pick in the comp pick formula as a result of, to get in the weeds in this. Basically, the comp pick formula works. Free agents that are eligible that you lose off your roster, there's some kind of formula combined with free agents you sign back. The Giants' net resulted by not trading those guys for the fourth-round pick. Could they have done better if they had traded Saquon Barkley at the deadline? I'd like to think they would have. They didn't. Yeah. They held on to him. Culture reasons, this, that, and the other. Why does that tie into this year? The Giants didn't have a Saquon Barkley, nor did they have an Xavier McKinney, where I think they have necessarily a big-ticketed free agent. But they, in a situation where pass rushers were flying around here on deadline day, including Zadarius Smith, who got traded to the Detroit Lions. The Giants have a pending free agent and a young one. Now, some might consider him an ascending player, Azeez Ojulari. I'm intrigued in the Giants keeping him. Ultimately, though, they do have investments in Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. Man, I just got to be fair, Bryce. I understand the easy analysis, and I kind of argued with Tiki Barber about this on Evan and Tiki. The easy analysis is, what are you going to do with a sixth-round pick? What are you going to do with a seventh-round pick? And I do understand that. I would like to do better than that, but if that's what the market was dictating, I understand. The Giants chose to stand pat. And if both of those guys walk in free agency, they're not going to get the comp pick situation that they got off the Barkley-McKinney situation. Why? The Giants are going to have more cap space to navigate, and a team that's going to be filled with holes. The Giants are going to be one of the more active teams in free agency. Yeah. At least that's what I would expect. And in all likelihood, they're not going to be netting the positive in comp picks if they lose these guys. Now, why is a sixth-round pick important? It may not be. If you sit back and you take a sixth-round pick, it could turn into somebody that's easily cut, or it turns into Trey Hawkins, who just hangs around for a couple of years, never really becomes anything. That's what a sixth-round pick can be. You know what else a sixth-round pick can be? It could be a sweetener if you're sitting there in the fourth round or the third round, and there's a player that you think is going to be a starter on your team that you need to move up for and not sit back 8 picks later. It is draft capital. So, look, the Giants busted on Jalen Hyatt a couple of years ago, Bryce, in the third round, but the Giants traded up in the third round because they identified a player they want. And to me, a team that has so many holes needs to come away from drafts with starters, right? You need to find multiple starting players or quality players on your team. All right. Well, if you're in the third round or you're in the fourth round where they got Theo Johnson this year, and you think there's somebody there that could be a quality starter on your team, and now you don't have that what could be an extra 6th-round pick while Azeez Ojulari walked out for nothing. I know that sounds nerdy. I know that sounds ridiculous in real time, but it's just the truth. Capital is capital on draft day, and don't thumb your nose at it and then wonder when the chips fall and nobody's paying attention on day 3 of the draft why you didn't make a maneuver for something, or day 2 of the draft when it comes down to a little move like that. So, Bryce, it's just kind of a long-winded way of saying if you're not going to keep these guys, you should be taking anything you can get for them, because next year's roster is far more important than this year's roster at 2 and 7. That being said, if Darius Slayton and Azeez Ojulari are both back in this free agency pool, I'd be fine with both of those guys in the roles they have. But if they're not, I think that the trade deadline was a massive mistake for the New York Football Giants.
Completely agree. And I want to sit here and, disagree with you for fun, but there's no point, because I completely agree with you. There was really no other way to look at this when you look at what could have potentially been out there. I mean, I'm assuming the Giants, they were looking for a 4th-round pick for Azeez, which was never going to happen.
Right. And by the way, the market, Zadarius Smith didn't even fetch that. But
Zadarius Smith in his 30s. Azeez is literally a year older than me, even though this is his 4th NFL season. A young guy who obviously has missed the majority of his career due to injury.
But it's so young.
No, 100%. And if you're able to get him on the right track and you're able to keep him healthy, he could be a very valuable piece to your team. I'm sure the Lions look to trade with the Giants. That probably would have been a better option for them because they could have re-signed him for cheap. But with who the Giants have at edge, are you really going to go out and sign a guy who's now 24 to a long-term deal, especially when you're going to have to pay Kayvon? There's going to be big money now allocated to him, not only just Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. Are you really going to want to spend 5-6? And this is obviously, I'm not an expert. I don't know how much money he's actually going to fetch in the free agent market, but let's just say $5, $6, $7 million for a guy who's a depth piece. So if you could have gotten anything from a 5th to a 7th-round pick for him, I don't understand why you didn't go for that. Darius Slayton, I'm kind of on the same page with him because I can't see the Giants bringing him back. I think he's a really good option, but I think for him, listen, he could be a Giants lifer. He's been very loyal to this team. He's been a great option for this team. He's gotten a lot of hate. He's gotten a lot of you-know-what, but in reality, he's been a stand-up guy who's endured some terrible seasons here. I hope he goes somewhere else and wins and actually shows for a really good team that he's a good wide receiver, because, Shaun, he is. Not just with the deep. Well, he is. Listen, let me say this. He's a top 15 deep ball threat in the league. He's had Daniel Jones throwing to him. I think you could say that with his production.
15, dude.
With his production, with Daniel Jones throwing him, you put him. Let's say the Chiefs traded for him. You'd see how good he is. I really think that Darius Slayton's one of the most underrated receivers in the league. 15 guys, 14 you can put in front of him. Listen, he's a really good player.
Bryce,
I think we're
overrating Slayton a little bit.
I think he's a great player. I think he's a great player.
Jerry Rice is a great player. Can we calm down, Bryce?
He's an amazing player. Jerry Rice is an amazing player.
Come on, man. Here's the deal. Darius Slayton.
He's a solid player. He's a
solid NFL wide receiver. Here's the problem. Before you put him in the top 15 deep threats in the league and everything.
Just straight up and down. Straight up and down.
We always, and I think organizations do this, you're always going to overvalue guys that are your own and you've seen. And I think Darius Slayton was a great story and great rapport with Daniel Jones. I don't dislike him. I think he's a good pro. Dude, every time Darius Slayton has a big pass come in his hands, he drops it. I'm saying for getting open up and down. He's fine.
He's very good at getting open.
Pretty big job in playing wide receiver and being a big time deep threat is catching the ball, and he drops way too many passes.
Okay, so at that point,
I just think that we've internally overrated Darius Slayton. Oh, by the way,
but you could have gotten a draft pick for him. You could have gotten a draft pick.
Here's where I'll butt back. Maybe the Giants found out Darius Slayton is not nearly as valued on the trade market as Giants fans think he is.
Or Shaun.
Yeah.
Or the other side of this, which is slightly concerning. It's what happened last year. John Mara got involved and said, we don't want to trade Saquon Barkley. Do you think these guys were held on to? No. Do you think John Mara went to Joe Shane and said, we're keeping these guys because we want to compete, we want to put butts in seats?
No, because nobody's coming to see Darius Slayton or Azeez Ojulari.
But them.
Now here's what I would say. It could be the opposite. It could be the opposite where Joe Shane and Brian Dable are thinking to themselves, I know we got a vow of confidence from Mr. Mara, but we can't go 2-15 the rest of the year.
That's what I'm saying.
and therefore make trades that are ultimately going to get another general manager picks. Like if that's in the back of their mind, that would be something.
Is Joe Schoen concerned for his job, and that's why he didn't trade any of these guys
I'd like to
away?
think he isn't, but you have to ask yourself that question. So
yeah,
maybe not a lot of teams called on Darius Slayton where they found, two to tango on it. Yeah. Now, again,
and I'm not saying it either way, but I just think it's an interesting conversation to have.
Now, if Azeez Ojulari and Darius Slayton are back here next year, I can't kill keeping them because it just means, you had in good faith and these guys are back. And again, they're not free agents I'd say no to next year. Obviously, price beware. If Darius Slayton's getting some kind of big-time contract somewhere, no thanks. I have a hard time still thinking Azeez Ojulari is going to get a big-time contract. And you need 3 pass rushers, I think, in the NFL anyway. The depth of pass rush helps. But that's where I sat at the trade deadline. But the Giants press on. Here's their roster. And here we go. Off to Germany we go. Where Bryce, I'm very curious where you're sitting on this. You teased about 10 minutes ago that you think that this is the biggest Giants game of the year. And I'm curious, is this because of Tank losing for the draft pick purposes?
Of course. I think when you look at what happened last year, games they should have lost that they didn't, look where it impacted them. And I'm not saying, listen, this is the other thing about this quarterback draft class. It isn't as sure of a quarterback draft class as it was last year. You knew Caleb Williams is the number one guy. You know one of the most highly rated prospects in recent NFL history. You knew you had Jaden Daniels. You knew you had Drake May. You knew you had that 3-headed snake at the top of the draft, where if you get one of those 3 picks, you're going to end up with one of those guys. It's not a situation like that. It's a little less sure than it was last time. But either way, the Giants win 2 games that they should. Obviously, the one we're going to point to is the Patriots game. Obviously that was out of their control. The kicker missed a kick. But that game, the Packers game, which was hype, wasn't awesome, whatever. Either way, when you play a team that's this bad, a team that you should beat, and I think they will beat them. We'll get to that later. This is a game that will have implications on what draft pick you have. And at the current moment right now, I think there are 7 teams tied at 2-7. So losing a game like this to another 2-7 team, first off, one of those or 2 of those teams are going to win this week. I think that's a possibility. And then you beat it, you lose to a team that is going to win. So I think based off what we saw last year, based off where this Giants team is going right now by holding on to these guys at the trade deadline, that you're starting to see what could transpire at the end of the year with Daniel Jones being sat, Tommy DeVito coming back up. We can have, I said it last week that I think we're going to see a repeat of what happened last year. This is a good start in terms of again, you're not rooting for your team to lose. I'm not rooting for my team to lose. I'm going to be very happy if they win and very happy if they lose. You can understand the bigger picture, but at the same time, be okay with a loss. So I think that this team right now with a loss would be set up extremely well to end up with the top 5 pick, end up with the top 4 pick, and end up with potentially, you never know, they could draft a bum, potentially with their quarterback of the future. That's why I think it's important.
Okay. So I like where your head's at. I like that you're accepting this, and I just want to insert disclaimer here. This is where the NFL sucks, and they should have an NFL draft lottery so that we're worried about ping pong balls and not worried about directly where you are. Everything you said about being ahead of a team like the Carolina Panthers in the draft order makes a ton of sense. But I actually think this is a really important game to win for the future of the New York Giants more than lose. Okay? Hear me out. You're right. And I have been the king of screaming about how much last year beating the Commanders and Patriots.
We said it last year. We said it last year.
And it's cost them, right? They could have had Jaden Daniels if they had lost both those games. Fine. There's, I think, 2 big differences this year in a situation like that compared to last year. Or, maybe 3. First is the quarterback draft class. Maybe quarterbacks aren't going 1, 2, 3, something like that, where the better players in the draft, some of these teams that might be in, like think about it, if you're the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young right now won a game last year. Maybe you're not giving up on Bryce Young. So maybe by losing this, you're not.
They're drafting
maybe, or they're scared to make the same Bryce Young mistake because they don't fall in love with anybody. Now, here's point number 2. The Giants have another one of these bad teams in their back pocket staring at them. They made the calls, and we heard the conversations with the New England Patriots about trading last year for a quarterback. The New England Patriots ultimately were unwilling to move, and they took their guy in Drake May. They are without a shadow of a doubt, not taking a quarterback in this draft. So if the Giants win this game and the Patriots remain worse than them and the Patriots are sitting there in the top 3, which, by the way, they might be because they stink, I hold to this. The Giants will make a trade with the New England Patriots if their quarterback is there, and I think New England will be willing to tangle because the Giants are going to be good enough anywhere where New England is not going to slide back. I really foresee that coming. Now, number 3.
You don't want to have to waste draft assets to move up in the draft.
But this is what gets me to number 3, and this is why I think this game's important to win, dude. I'm Team Dable. I think Brian Dable's a good head coach, and I cannot judge Brian Dable until I see him finally coach a team with the quarterback that he selected in the draft. We saw him do good things with DeVito. In hindsight, we saw him do great things 2 years ago with Daniel Jones, which I think now we have to change our mindset on what he actually did there. And of course, coming from Buffalo and what he did. The whole reason you hire a Brian Dable is not for his clock management, not for his use of challenges, but it's for his work in the quarterback room like he did with Josh Allen. To have an entire Brian Dable tenure come and go and never draft a quarterback in the first round that he could work with would feel like such a waste of his coaching tenure. Now, you might be saying, well, Shaun, what are you talking about? John Mara just gave him a vow of confidence. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers in a standalone international game. We're talking about a team that just beat the New Orleans Saints last week that got that coach fired and Dennis Allen. Everything that has been said in the, Brian Dable is not on the hot seat stuff, I think was great by the owner. Card subject to change if they lose to the Carolina Panthers, maybe the other worst team in football, in a standalone game on national TV. If the Giants lose this game specifically, this one, I'm not talking about the rest of the year, because they could lose to Dallas a million times. We've seen that a million times. They could lose to the Ravens. They could lose to the freaking Colts. Yeah. This team, with the world in theory watching, to get embarrassed there, you cannot tell me come the end of the year that Brian Dable's job is for sure safe. That would be the one, I think, where the owner would go, wait, we're not even prepared to beat the Carolina Panthers this week, despite who the Giants are missing. So, look, you might be listening to this podcast, One Giant Step. Download, subscribe everywhere podcasts are available. Thank you very much. And you might be saying, yeah, lose the game. Who cares? Get rid of this coach. If that's your MO, that's fine. I get it. Get to the top of the draft, hire a new coach, fine. I'm telling you, if they lose this game, I am not as certain as I once was that Dable's back, and I want Dable's hands on a quarterback. So it's a little bit of a threading the needle there. I'm asking them for 1 week to win a game and then go back to losing. I just think that this would be the one that would stick in the craw of the owner. That's where I stand, Bryce. So I actually think if you want Dable to be here, I do think this is an important game to win.
I think it's a valid point, but one thing has to be true for mine not to be true. My prophecy, or what I'm saying, the fact that it's not important, it's the most important game of the season. If his job is really at risk, I don't think it is. I mean, when we've seen from Brian Dable with the limited options he's had at quarterback, the limited option he has at quarterback, Daniel Jones, is largely positive. So listen, I get it that and we've spoke about it plenty of times on this podcast with John Mara, and I don't think that he is he's quick to fire. I don't think he's got guys on a short leash the majority of the time. Dave Gelman stayed way longer than he should have. He hired way too many head coaches. I think that he's ultimately going to have patience, but it's a moot point. I agree with you. If his job is actually at risk, then this is an important game for different reasons, but it's an important game nonetheless.
Okay. Well, with that, Bryce, we got a couple tweets at Shaun Morash, at Bryce Gelman before we get to fantasy versus reality. You could always tweet at us at Bryce Gelman, at Shaun Morash, and we're going to try to workshop some of these into the podcast going forward. Bryce, you want to fire away a couple of these, give their Twitter handle out, and let's answer them? Absolutely. And by the way, I think we can kind of do these rapid fire before we get to fantasy versus reality. We don't got to go crazy, but let's see what the listeners want.
All right. So we got NYG Men's Zone _.
You think he's a Giant fan?
Outside of you want me to spell it out?
No, I'm laughing.
Outside of getting rid of Jones in the quarterback situation, what is the biggest thing the Giants need to do this offseason? You want me to go? Let me give you my quick answer, then you go with the longer one. Okay. Secondary, a cornerback, a number one cornerback. Absolutely.
All right. I think that's an obvious one, so I can't deny it. Here's the problem with a team with holes. Picking the biggest. You're right. Secondary's a hole. So if I'm going to say something different, offensive tackle. offensive tackle.
Yep.
It's 2 straight years that Andrew Thomas has gotten hurt. And by no means am I telling you get rid of that contract, cut him, because when he plays, he's one of the best left tackles in football. In no way, shape, or form should a left tackle get injured like this and then the team become unfunctionable offensively. And that's exactly what's happened to the Giants now 2 years in a row. And if you are going to have a rookie quarterback on this team next year, you can't have depth like that. That doesn't mean you're going to get an all-world left tackle, but you can't just have failed projects like Josh Azudu or hoping you sign a guy off a Niners practice squad in week 2. I actually think offensive tackle, again, you go back into the waters here, becomes that important in the offseason, some kind of swing tackle.
All right, so we got Yankees enjoyer at room wage. Is tanking for a quarterback in this class worth it with Arch Manning in next year's class?
This comes back. I'll answer this one first. This comes back to what I just said about Brian Daboll.
Yeah.
If the Giants are in position to draft Arch Manning next year, that means Brian Daboll's not the head coach, because they're not going to survive 2 of these where they're that bad without a quarterback. Now, maybe they sign Sam Darnold or whatever, but think about it. To get Arch Manning, as it stands right now, a year and a half out, you're going to have the number 1 overall pick. You're going to have the number 1 overall pick, and it's hard to imagine the team getting the number 1 overall pick also already having a quarterback in place.
Yeah.
So the short answer is no, it's not worth it, because too much has to happen. You need to pass this year, go totally bad next year, which means you're wasting another year of Dexter Lawrence, of Andrew Thomas, of all of this, then lose your coach, and then also guarantee yourself in a finicky NFL that you also have the worst record.
Yeah.
It's hard enough guaranteeing you get into the top 5. So, no, I got to find the quarterback this year. Unfortunately, the timing just does not align for Arch Manning for the New York Giants.
The chips just didn't fall the way the Giants wanted it to fall with
You got to be bad. You got to be bad and the absolute worst in the absolute right year. And it feels like the Giants are going to be a year off on that.
It's rare. It's generational. If that kind of stuff happens, It's not happening. I'm full agreement with you. All right. James Hickey at Jimmy the Hick 11 says, which pro quarterback, Carr, Russ, Sam D, et al., that has a chance to be available after the season would you want to be on the team next year and don't have a college QB you like? It's going to be a college QB. Like, it has to be. You have to draft someone in the draft.
There's one other avenue. I actually am going to dismiss all that. It's I'm not really interested in Derek Carr. Sam Darnold, I could be talked into. Russell Wilson, I mean, they flirted with. I can't imagine it's that. Here's the one other. Keep an eye on this offseason. Depending on where they are in the draft, depending on where their scouting process is, a trade for Anthony Richardson.
The
Colts just sat. The Colts just sat him. Doesn't mean the Colts are done with him, but you never know. Maybe they decide that, you know what, we're moving on after 2 years. And is that a guy where a change of scenery does him good and Brian Daboll gets his hands on him and he figures it out? Maybe not. Maybe he needs some maturity to grow up. Put it this way, I'd be more intrigued with his upside than what I already know about Sam Darnold and Derek Carr.
All right, we have 3 more. You want to? All right, one of them. Okay, I'm gonna get this one out of the way. Brian H at Brian H 915 says, "Why would someone pay to go see this team play in Germany? Because they don't get games in Germany. No, like license plate guy will be there. Okay, you get your usual game.
And those traveling have had this trip planned. And by the way, this is why you pay for it, because you get more of an experience. Now, if you're telling me you're in Germany and you see this, they don't know the Panthers and Giants stink. And if they do,
I mean, listen,
and they're transplanted. Maybe they're transplanted Americans that live there. This is a chance to see pro football. So. That's why it's easier said than done. You would, if you lived in Germany and you cared about football, you'd go.
So we get 2 questions here, one from Charlie and one from Raymond Morales. They're both on the same page. I'll just read one. Raymond says, if the Giants lose on Sunday, does this coaching staff and GM come back next year? Essentially, the other one is the same. If they go winless and they lose out at home and whatever.
All right. I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. I think that this is... I think they'll be safe no matter what happens the rest of the year if they win this game. But I think this is the one, man. I think this is the one where everything shifts. If they lose this game, I become worried, and I don't want that. I want Brian Daboll to be the head coach of this team because I'm scared of what's next, and I actually think he can coach. So
yeah, I don't think they get fired 100% after this game, but that's when
I'm not saying after this game, but after the year, yeah. They may, man.
All right, the wheels might be in motion, but yeah, let's move on.
Thank you, everybody, for tweeting at us. That's Shaun Morash at Bryce Gelman. So hopefully we read your tweets, and if we didn't, get it back at them next week. All right, fantasy versus reality or game picks. Let's get it rolling. Giants-Panthers Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. from Germany. I think this one's real simple, man, this week. Actually, I'm excited. This might be the last time I'm excited to do this segment, right?
Yeah.
All year. Fantasy pick, bro. This one's obvious. This feels like such a Malik Neighbors show. Darius Slayton is not going to travel to Germany with the concussion. Remember, that was my pick last week. This is a spot where I think the Giants and Brian Dable know the Carolina Panthers stink, okay? They can't lose. How do you make this happen? Malik Neighbors was a little unhappy with his usage in the first half. This is a game where whether it's short screens, short slants, whatever, I think Malik Neighbors is finding his way back into the end zone in this game. He's kind of been a little bit quiet, come back from the concussion. This screams to me the type of game where Malik Neighbors could have like 175 yards receiving and a touchdown. I think they're going to feed him nonstop. And I think the last time that the Giants will be featured on national TV all year, I think people will walk out of this game humming about Malik Neighbors. So I think Malik Neighbors is the play. I think Malik Neighbors anytime touchdowns a play. He's too good a player to be like too quiet just because the Giants lost their left tackle. He's going to explode versus a bad team like the Panthers. The reality of the game here. Look, it comes down to defensively. The Panthers just paid Chuba Hubbard a ton of money today. Okay. He's had actually a good year. Jonathan Brooks might be activated finally. That's a rookie that they like a lot that has been hurt all year. They have Miles Sanders. How has the Giants defense been exposed in all the games that they've looked bad in? It's been because of the run game. The Giants can't have the Carolina Panthers push them around off the ball and rush for like 150 yards in this game. They got to stop the run. They have to stop the run because if they don't stop the run, it's going to start to look embarrassing on defense that the Panthers are gashing them. So I think if the Giants find a way, don't let Carolina rush for over 100 yards. You do that, and dare Bryce Gelman, dare Bryce Young to beat you, and the Giants should be fine. So they'll figure out a way offensively to get into the 20s. I really do believe that. I think they will versus Carolina defense. It's just about stopping the damn run versus the Panthers and getting off the field. I think they do that. They'll be all right. Ultimately, do I think the Giants win? I do. Do I think it's going to be pretty by any means? I don't. I'm just going to give you a standard 20-13 Giants win. They'll cover the spread. It'll be by a touchdown. At no point will you necessarily feel great about the team. Malik Neighbors will score one of the two touchdowns they score. That's it. Giants win 20-13 in a very ho-hum Germany fashion.
I like that. That's good. That's all great. That's all fun and games. I think, Shaun, with my fantasy pick, and this will be the ceremonial last time I pick him because it might be the last time we see him in a game for the Giants, I'm going to go with Daniel Jones. And you want to know why? I got one reason why. Well, first off, the Panthers are a garbage football team, and Daniel Jones, even though Derek Carr didn't have the best game last week, he threw for like 230 yards and had a touchdown. But, he just came back and whatever, the coach was fine. A lot of turmoil going on there. The fact that Daniel Jones is going to be thousands upon thousands upon thousands of miles away from MetLife Stadium, it means he's going to have a good game. What did he do? What did he do in Seattle? He was unbelievable in Seattle. He was amazing. I understand he had Andrew Thomas at the time, but I genuinely do think that Daniel Jones will be a good option here against a pretty poor Panthers defense. Listen. He's playing for his Giants career right now, so there's a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of pressure on him lately. He played a really good game. Against the Commanders, but as we spoke about, it's the Commanders, and that's a team that he's always historically done well against. I think he's going to be far away from MetLife Stadium, and I think he's going to have a good game. I really do.
Okay.
The Giants win this game. I think there's a multitude of things could go wrong in this game, but I think the Giants will still win. I think Chuba Hubbard could have an amazing game on the ground, and the Giants could still win this game. So it's all about if they put up points. It really is about whether or not they could put points on the board. For the first time this season, their offense could score 25 points in a game. That is definitely important. I think the Giants win this game. They got to get to the quarterback. They will get to the quarterback. The Giants have the most sacks in the NFL by 4 sacks. Last week against the Saints only hit him 4 times. The Giants are averaging more sacks each week. The Giants will have their way in this game. They have been having their way against most offensive lines this year. Dexter Lawrence had a down week. These guys are going to show up, and they're going to show out. So I think the Giants are going to get to the quarterback plenty of times. Bryce Young, man. I mean, look, this guy with the low QBRs, he had a 47.6 QBR last week, Shaun. Against a team that hit him 4 times. So think about it. If you can actually get him, you can actually rattle him, he is going to have a Bryce Young game. He's not going to play well. So I think the Giants win this game ultimately. This might be is this the first? I don't think this is the first time I picked them all year. It might be. I don't think it is, but it might be.
I think you picked them either week 1 or 2. I do.
Yeah. I don't think it's the first time, but it has to be either the first or second. I think the Giants win this game 27-10. I think their offense finally puts points on the board. The Panthers are not a good football team. I think the Giants are good. Listen, they played the Commanders extremely well last week. The Commanders, the week before, won on a Hail Mary, whatever. What are they? 6-2? They're a really good team, and the Giants played them extremely well. So, and listen, not to say that it's automatically going to transfer over, but with how much Daniel Jones has on the line, with this being a standalone game in international, I would say it's not international waters, in a different country. I think the Giants are going to have a good game, and I think they're finally going to break the streak, Shaun. It's been since January of 2024 since the Giants offense scored 25 points a game, and I think they do it this week.
Okay, I like that. Before we go though, Bryce, I have a take. I'm gonna unleash it here because I haven't really had time to say it on Evan and Tiki. You brought up the Commanders and the Giants playing close with them. Buyer beware. And this is a Giants podcast on the Washington Commanders going forward. The Washington Commanders are 7-2. Okay. The Washington Commanders have beaten the Giants twice. They beat the Cleveland Browns. They killed the Carolina Panthers. And they beat the Chicago Bears on a Hail Mary. Calm down on the Washington Commanders.
Listen,
I'm trying
to make the Giants look better, all right?
They have really loaded up on some dreck. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean that.
Okay, to be fair, the worst Jaden Daniels has looked all year long was the first time the Giants played them.
Yeah, I agree. And he's only going to get better. And I like Jaden Daniels, and I want to. All I'm telling everybody is just to take a little. You know what? I'm going to steal this from somebody covers the Giants. Texted me this week. Commanders have a lot of 2022 Giants in them. Taking advantage of a bad schedule, maybe not as good as their record indicates.
They actually have a good quarterback, so
Yeah, well, but they're not with a lot of passing yards either. They're playing a lot of that style the 2022 Giants did. So
I just want to say, want to say, in our last video that we posted on YouTube, it was the recap, of course, the Commanders game. A lot of Commanders fans had stuff to say. A lot of them, because you at the time discredited their win the week before. On the Hail Mary against the Bears, and you correctly came out and said, oh, he didn't have that great of a game offensively. Commanders fans were quick to point out that he passed for 300, whatever yardage he had. They were like, look how good he is. There were more Commanders fans commenting, I think, on that post than Giants fans. So hopefully they've watched this video and they've watched until 32 minutes in, and they can hate tweet you.
Well, Commander fans, if you watch this, you frauds. Thanks for listening and watching One Giant Step. At Bryce Gelman, where you can find Bryce. He thinks you're a fraud, too. At Shaun Morash, where you can find me. And thanks to all our tweeters and the questions that came in as well. Thank you to everybody. Enjoy the schnitzel. Enjoy the beers early in the morning. Enjoy Germany football. Thank you for taking One Giant Step with us.